Well, we are live with Colleen Cook, president of the National Coalition for Public School Options, also a parent advocate, at least for the last 8 years. We were just talking right before this show, and I got chills, a little bit goosebumps in what we were just talking about. One of the things that I was telling Colleen is that I have become different as a person now who's staying home with kids. And one of the ways that I've become different is that as someone who advocates for standardized testing, improvements in, closing the achievement gap and having measurable outcomes, these things that are kind of the concrete parts of school reform. It's interesting that now that I'm home with my kids, I say things like the world's not going to end if they don't do a whole hour of math today, and if they don't do a whole hour of reading. And I might be becoming somewhat of a crunchy parent. I don't know that people in the field want me to be home too much longer, because it's starting to change what I prioritize and what I think about, because I'm seeing my kids all day long, and I kind of know, getting a better idea of what they need. But Colleen, welcome. Thank you for coming this morning. I actually do want to start with what you just told me, because it gave me kind of a little bit of goosebumps. In 2012, you had a situation where you had a very high performing student, and you had something said to you that kind of clarified for you everything that I was just saying. What was that? If you don't mind sharing.
No, I don't mind sharing. It was, from my son's counselor. At the end of the day, what's important? Do you want him, to achieve the grades, or do you want him here through high school and beyond? And as parents, we had to realize that we were putting a lot of pressure on our child to perform the way that we know it. Like, he is very capable of that, but it was affecting his mental health and his self-worth. And we needed to really just wake up a little bit, and just put in perspective that we wanted our child here for the long term, not just, to perform. So.
Isn't that so, I am really affected by that, by hearing you say that, because it's a question like that from the counselor, do you want your kid to be an honor student, high performing, grinding it out, staying up at nights and weekends to get those grades and to make that thing, happen that you think is great and that they're capable of, but they're internally very unhappy and quite possibly on track to do harm to themselves in ways. I don't know that I've given that enough support, actually, when it's come up before in conversations. But hearing you say it that way, we have millions of parents at home right now. You're the president of a parent advocacy organization, a national parent advocacy organization. And I'm looking for the upside of 32 million plus kids being home, and the upside of their parents being at home with them. And I can't find many upsides, because this is really a tough time for people, and it by all measures, it looks like it's going to get worse. But what do you think? What's the upside?
Well, I think it gives us an opportunity to learn a little bit about our children as students, kind of where their strengths are, where their interests are, what, because we don't spend that learning time with them when they're at school, and we know what they're capable of. I think, parents, I know what my kids are capable of. They're certainly capable sometimes of a lot more than what they give. But it opens up a little more time for conversations about what they want from themselves, what they see for themselves. And I think that's a positive thing. My daughter transferred back to online at the semester in January. And so haven't had a lot of disruption, but we have. And it's given us a little bit more time to talk. And one thing that I told her, she's 15. So, she's in that age group that they're connected 24/7, and
Mm.
they're a little distanced. They do have their phones still, and they're still snapping and doing all that fun stuff that they do, but she also has a little more downtime, and I said, "This is a good time for you to check in with yourself.
Mm.
This is a good
Mhm.
time for you to figure out a little bit who you are." And, they can run away, they can escape a lot with their friends. They go to school, they're connected with them, after school. But this is kind of allowing her some time to do some internal checks. And I think that's a huge plus for, that age group, that they get to do that as well, a little more separation.
So parents being home, I mean, you're going to learn more. You're going
Right.
to learn more about your kids. So I want to get to this part about what do parents do with what they learn during this time. I think the first part of this is just surviving it.
Right.
That's the first part. Like, the
Right.
major lesson right now, I think, in the first part is to get through each day and make sure your kids get what they need. I think, though, this is going to go on for a while. And as it goes on, as people become more comfortable with that, I wonder if they're going to become better advocates for a set of things. Like, are they going to learn anything that makes them better advocates?
I hope so. I hope this is an opportunity for parents to just kind of see some gaps that need to be filled, to see some inequities that are out there, and
Hmm.
to see, maybe some things that need to change in the current system that, they can proactively go and advocate for. I'm also hoping that this is a time where the administrators and um, teachers who are now home and seeing kind of a different side of it, that, they'll incorporate some things that they're learning into their daily practices and how they do things on their side of this.
So, what type of things do you think that parents should become better advocates for? Let's talk brass tacks, Colleen. What's some real stuff like policy wise that
Well,
parents might learn and support?
the testing,
The
you
the
know,
testing. I'm sorry, is that what you
the
said?
testing,
Okay.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
testing being such a you know, an end all be all in
Hmm.
education. Um, maybe focus a little bit more on growth and individual students' performance instead of, have that one day measure this child and a school system. Um, I think that should be kind of something that we all look at because each child, I think you're learning that, focusing 100% on their subject matter during the day isn't necessarily the most important thing that day, or
Hmm.
what they're really mentally capable of that day, and having some flexibility. Um, and maybe some funding issues. There's a lot of inequities in um, funding with online and traditional brick and mortar. And I think we're starting to see that maybe the online world is um, functioning in a way that isn't just a computer and a liaison at home. It's a full functioning school with needs and financial needs, and to make it better we need to fund it equitably. um, they use text, they use curriculum, and it is a full functioning school. um,
Hmm.
and how important those teachers are, those online teachers who step up and do the training and become professionals, like real um, oh leaders in their field and experts in online education. It's not as easily, to do just to jump from a classroom to online. The online teachers take a lot of time and professional development to become gifted in that screen time. So, the equity there, I think, is important too.
Yeah. I keep hearing these things about like making sure to correct people that this is not homeschooling. Like if you want to like learn what homeschooling actually is, this might be a good opportunity to learn what it is. But what you're doing so far isn't it. This isn't online education.
No.
This might be the open door for you to learn what online,
Right.
education is. But don't misunderstand what you're doing right now.
This is crisis schooling is what this
Right.
is. This is, you
Right.
know, um, I think this is not homeschool and this is not online school. And even, my daughter, who is an online student, her education is disrupted a little bit. We went on spring break and um, now she's on an extended break, which
Mm.
I mentioned yesterday. I really haven't. I keep her working. She doesn't really know that. I haven't told her too much that April 6th is when it technically starts back. But I got to
When
keep
you
her.
say it starts back, that's when
The
her
teachers
official
come back
schoolwork.
in. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Teachers come
Yeah.
back in and all that.
Hmm.
But her day, this has affected her greatly. She goes to work. She works at a daycare and she hasn't been to work in almost a month. So her day um, is really disrupted. So,
Hmm.
she's
Hmm.
trying to get back into a normal swing as well. And, there's no going out for field trips or outings. The schools are really great about providing outings and social um, activities for the kids. And that's not happening either. And the same with homeschool parents. Homeschool parents don't sit and just school in their home. There's a
Yeah.
lot of activity that goes on with that, a lot of co-ops and um, it's just not the norm.
You know what? I see a couple of comments here. Tilly Elverum says, if we come out of the other side of this without making some fundamental changes to the system, we will have missed an incredible opportunity to improve education for students and educators.
Yeah.
There's also a comment here from Christina Laster, who says, almost everyone I checked in with yesterday were showing signs of depression. I am concerned that parents are not putting quality over quantity. It may overwhelm you if you're trying to complete so many things in one day. You know your child best.
Yes. Both.
That's daunting.
Yes, yes. And both comments I agree with 100%. And, we kind of touched on what Christina had said, with you just kind of letting some things go with your
Hmm.
kids and
Hmm.
what um, we found out back in, what we were made aware of in 2012. You know, kids, their attention spans are not like to sit in front of a computer
Hmm.
for an hour
Hmm.
at a time or sit and do schoolwork right there at the table hours at a time. It's short bursts. They can really.
Yeah, Colleen, I'm going to challenge you on this a little bit, though. I mean, this is where I don't know how old you are, and I'm not going to ask you, but I'm starting to feel my age. I'm starting to feel like an old guy. I get to say old guy things now, right?
Yeah.
Again, this thing about the attention span and okay, here I go. I'm Gen Xer, and this is going to sound even older than Gen Xer. This is going to sound boomerish what I'm about to say, right? But this whole thing around not being able to write full sentences because you text too much, not being able to sustain relationships because we're in the age of Tinder where you get to swipe left or right. I don't even know how it works anymore. You're not capable of sitting for extended periods of time because you've played too much Xbox and everything happens rapid fire and everything's got to be so I'm trying to be the good
Right.
crunchy parent on one hand. And on the other hand, I'm thinking to myself, dudes, do you know how long I used to have to just sit and look at damn math problems and do them over and over again?
Right.
That's just my rant. That's just my rant.
I get it. My great grandmother taught in a one-room schoolhouse,
Oh, wow.
and I went to Catholic school and was taught by nuns in my elementary years. So, and then I transferred to public school. So I get that, the expectation, no, just sit, and we sat properly. We didn't get to be comfortable really,
Hmm. Hmm.
but And I do fully expect full sentences from my kids, and I do it
Good.
gets a little upset with me because when her and her friends are talking, I don't usually answer until they say it correctly. But, and she has reminded her friends like, "Oh, whatever," it's kind of fun, but,
Mhm.
there is that expectation, but really in a classroom, you get what, 55 minutes in a classroom, and a lot of that time is spent taking care of classroom business or maybe a disruption or an announcement. So those kids really aren't sitting in that classroom for
Mhm.
55 minutes or, 50, whatever. And so to expect that to change when they're in their homes and a
Mhm.
little
Mhm.
more comfortable and I think we can give some grace there. And I know when my middle child came home and did online, I mean that kid could knock out some math. He didn't like
Mhm.
math, but he was good at math. And so he could knock out some math and he could finish his math in no time at all.
Mhm.
Where, my daughter was she was in elementary at the time when we first did online, and she dilly dallied and she would spend a lot more time on a subject. And so I think we kind of have to take into what our kids can do and where their strengths are and let them, if they can finish math in 20 minutes and do it well.
Mhm.
I also had a kid that trying to skirt the system, but, then we should encourage them to do that because that's where their strengths are.
Yeah.
And
That's not where
mm,
our strengths are sometimes as parents, though.
right, no,
I
it's
mean,
tough. And
you
I
know.
feel a lot of parents who switch to online, and especially with this crisis, there's a huge transition for us, to
Mhm.
get out of
Mhm.
our mindset, that 9 to 9:55 mindset that, 6 hours or however much in a day, because it is different. It's a different routine and a different schedule, and there's some growing pains when you transition,
Mhm.
and, under normal circumstances. Under these circumstances, adults are concerned about their jobs, their bills, and all that. Now add in the fact that they are concerned about their child's education
Mhm.
and doing the tasks that now maybe packets are sent home or they're trying to log into, classrooms and do the classwork there. It's high stress. And, with what Christina said, we have to kind of take a step back and remember that everyone is feeling that, our children are feeling that, and really give some grace and take some breaks and, give ourselves some grace as parents. You kind of mentioned, how you're starting to let some things go. And it's
Mhm.
not maybe letting some things go, it's just reprioritizing for the situation.
Well, I just wanna say that, like, because I talk sometimes, and I think people want to believe that I'm saying that I somehow have things figured out and I'm a perfect parent. I just want you to know right now, and anybody listening and watching this right now, you see me every morning as I'm doing this, I'm like drinking coffee. It is not out of the question that one morning you're going to start seeing me with gin because or whiskey in the morning in my coffee because I don't know how long I'm going to be able to sustain this. We have a comment from Matthew Nielsen who says, "What are some things we can do now to make sure we don't fall back into the same ruts we've been in for so long?" And that kind of echoes a comment that
Right,
Christina also has here, where she's saying that we should unfollow the common models with traditional calendars and do what helps our kids thrive, especially in concepts of time. Um, what I hear in that actually for me is um, hope for a potential that we're going to do better, and
right,
that this time is going to make us come out the other end renewed or thinking differently, like having disrupted the stale thing, but
right.
also fear. I think on one hand that what might happen is people love the convenience of the easy answer. So when the school doors fly back open again, you just might have parents just be like, I want to go back to the old normal and
Right.
just, you
Just
know, be done with it.
and get this over with.
Get this over with. Good Lord, take these kids, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
the meme game is strong with some of the homeschool things, and it's kind of funny because we've all probably had some of the thoughts with, um, some of the things that happen, but I recommend I take notes. I take notes on a lot of things. I take notes in just conversation. I don't actively take notes in conversation with my kids, but I'll go back
Mhm.
and I'll write things down and try to make it so that I can do things better with them. And I think as parents going through this, we need to take notes and try to have those conversations. Our administrators are still accessible to us. Our
Mhm.
school board is still accessible to us. We won't have physical meetings, but we can have those conversations and ensure that we get together as parents. And we can do that by reaching out to parents we know in our community and just do check-ins and see how they're
Mhm.
doing and gather their thoughts and, you know, come together as a community to come together at the school and have, you know, positive conversations
Mhm.
as to how we can move forward and make these changes. And, you know, touching base, your administrators are there for you. Um, you know, they're not, yes, they are home and trying to do all this themselves, but they are still very in touch with what they need to do at the school and accessible. We have,
Mhm.
you know, we can email them and we can discuss with them and set up, you know, times to talk and reach out to your lawmakers, you know, make sure we're keeping them informed of what's happening. I believe in a lot of proactive work. I think we go a lot further with coming up with solutions
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
conversations to be had. You know, take your notes and have those conversations and say, you know, I've noticed we do this and, you know, and maybe we'll come up with a plan to make it better and reach out to your fellow parents. You know, we're all in this together. Sometimes we feel very um, alone in all of this, but we're not. And the more you talk with parents from your, you know, your kids' friends or classmates, the more you'll find out that you're not alone and you group those like-minded people together and then you move forward to have those conversations. I call it through the chain of command. And
Mhm.
um, you know, hopefully we will see some positive changes within, you know, people's community schools as well.
When I think about parents becoming better advocates through this time, I really think about a couple of things that might not be popular to talk about. One of the things that I've really been thinking through is that one of the things that parents need to learn in this time period is just how responsible you are as the parent for the education of your child, and just how possible it is that you keep putting your children in the hands of a state government, and government schools, um, which is it's normal, it's traditional. It's not like that's an abnormal thing to do. But I think you'll learn right now that you're on your own,
Right.
that you should have been more responsible all along for what your kids learn. And I think that level of responsibility is going to be shocking and daunting for some.
Yes.
I do believe that some people are going to not love it. I don't think that. Um, Tell me if this sounds judgmental. You know, it could be that parenting has been this thing where we have factored in that we're not going to be full-time parents when we decide to have kids.
Right.
Like that someone else is going to have them for a period of time. So now you have a bunch of parents who are like, damn it, what are these kids doing at home?
Right.
Right. I saw somebody post a meme that was really funny to me. It was like, somebody needs to tell these teachers to take their kids back during the day. Right.
It's
And
funny.
I don't know.
I laugh and and I handle a lot of things with humor. But and it is funny, but it's sad
Hmm.
as
Hmm.
well because I do believe that, you know, we fill our kids' days with somebody else really taking a lot of responsibility for them between
Hmm.
sending them to school and then we have our kids so engaged in outside activities after school that sometimes we only get our kids from like 8 p.m. till bedtime. And, you know, that's not really how it should be. You know,
Hmm.
we
Hmm.
should be having our kids more. You know, our
Hmm.
weekends are filled with tournaments and games and competitions and things like that, where we don't even really have them on the weekends. We're toting them and we're funding it and we're, you know, we're there, but we're really not engaging with them as much as I expected as a parent.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I set out when I had kids and with some goals and they weren't really tangible goals. They were goals of, I wanted a happy family. I wanted happy, healthy kids. And,
Hmm.
I wanted communication was really important to me in our family, and they're not like grand goals. I don't care if they're doctors or lawyers or whatever. I want them happy. I want them healthy. And, but I don't know that I'm always the typical parent in that way,
Hmm.
but that was really important to me. And so sending them to school was hard for me. And I enjoy spring break. I enjoy, I'll joke around and stuff, but I do enjoy having my kids home. And
When
I
they're
always
home. Yeah.
needed, going back after Christmas. I kind of missed them, kind of enjoyed some of my freedom a little bit, but I miss them. Um, but I think that we have to change that and take back our role as parents
Hmm.
and take a little more control over our kids' day.
I feel like we have to start talking about it as a way to create cultural change around the definition of parenting. And I
Yeah,
think right now we do a lot of free passes. We give a lot of free passes to parents. A lot of our policy making and policy advocacy is completely with parents being off the hook,
right, right,
right? Like, and we probably can't push anything like school choice or online learning or distance learning as advocates if we aren't first saying, parents, before you even get to what your rights are, and before you even get to what your responsibility should be, you should know what your role is.
right,
And your role is your child's guardian for life, full-time teacher, educator, whatnot, and everybody else is your helper, but they're not your child, extended parents. Corey DeAngelis,
mhm,
school choice all-star and Twitter slayer
yes,
of dumb people. The Twitter slayer, the dumb people slayer on the internet. Corey DeAngelis has a question here, and he says, what percentage of families do you think would homeschool if we had educational savings accounts worth $12,000 per year?
yeah,
Now, this is interesting. I wanted to ask you about this anyways, is
yeah,
because you guys are called the National Coalition of Public School
right,
Options, which I think is interesting because many of the types of schools you guys support are going to be closed now during this time. But
yes.
what do you think about Corey's thought about
Well,
subsidizing
I've seen
parents?
this quiz on Twitter before.
Yeah. Yeah.
I already know the answer. I think it would be an extremely large amount of parents, especially now where they're seeing some things about their kids and maybe the building that they've been in for, however many years, maybe, there'll be some more parents that'll be more proactive and say, we pay a lot in taxes and, we would like, to see that better utilized. And
Hmm.
maybe I
Hmm.
could make a better choice than this. And so I'm hopeful that more parents will come to that realization.
I
And
need to have Corey on the show
yes,
and unpack this with him because I have a new idea that I'm thinking through. And I actually don't know if educational savings accounts or tax credits, as a libertarian, I get it. I get that they make the most, I think, kind of theological sense for our political disposition. But um, because not everybody pays taxes and not everybody wants to put money into shelters for other people's kids, I think we maybe should just agree that every child in the United States has an educational allotment, meaning like it's just a certain amount, and that every kid should have something like an ILA, which be like an independent learning account
right,
or an independent learning allotment, meaning this is what we pay for your kid, you get it, and here's your marketplace of places where you can spend it. But every kid gets an IEP,
right,
an individual learning plan, and if you want to use it at home, I know in Minnesota we have a credit that is for uh, non-school educational things. So you can have a credit to like buy supplies, to take your kids to museums and do different things throughout the year. That could just be expanded. That
right.
could just be the thing that we use. Well, Corey's on my idea already. Universal basic education income. UBEI. I don't know, man. I think it needs a better name. That's not
I
sexy.
Yeah, yeah, it's a mouthful. It's you got to shorten it. I think that this current situation that we are in will lead to a lot of conversations, and there will be a lot of people protecting their
Hmm.
establishments and
Hmm.
their um, what they have already formed and their livelihood. But I think there's room for a lot of conversations to be had. And, with people like Corey and you and, coalitions all over, you know, we can come together and decide where, the conversations need to lead and
Hmm.
get them going in that direction and get parents. We have access to parents and we're all stuck at home. We're in our
Hmm.
neighborhood. People are home. They're going to be answering their phone or, go tape a note on their door. Hey, how's Johnny doing? Let's have a conversation about this. Let's, see where we can go with this. And um,
This is what I think might be one of the challenges, though. I think, and I think you're on the vanguard of getting there. I talked to Tilly Elverum, who's also watching us today, and
yes,
was nice enough to come and talk with me a few days ago. When I first became aware of you all, I actually thought that you were representative of a constituency that I don't get to in my advocacy enough. And I was already in the midst of um, rethinking political strategy and thinking it's going to be impossible for us to win without a multiracial, cross-cultural, multi-geographical, not just urban, not just suburban, not just urban and suburban, but also ex-urban and rural. And I live, in a ex-urban and rural area. So I cross different lines. But I think parents are going to need to learn how to support each other across those lines if they really want power.
right.
If they really want power in the system. Have you been thinking at all, like with you have this apparatus now and chapters and people in different states and cities that can get us to constituencies that we couldn't normally get to, and vice versa? Do you have any learnings or any ideas about how we do a better job of combining our forces?
I think, you know, for me, it's trying to understand that, what happens here. And I actually just reached out to a friend of mine here in Oklahoma. And, you just start to realize that people don't have access to things like I have access
Hmm.
to.
Hmm.
And I know that a lot of the work that he does, he reaches communities that maybe I'm not necessarily always in or have access to. And so I just reached out to him and said, "Hey, what can I do? What needs do you have? Is there anything that I can do?" And I think that just understanding and reaching out to those and kind of realizing that there are other groups of people that we need to reach out to and that there's a bridge to that
Hmm.
community
Hmm.
that we have within our social networks and reaching out to those and building those relationships and then bridging that gap to build those relationships in those other communities.
It feels like right now that would be step one in creating the better advocacy in parents that we
Yeah.
want to see, which is actually creating the opportunity for people to build relationships. Um, you know, I I saw you at the Parents Union
Yes.
kickoff in New Orleans, which I thought was great. It was a
That was
great
amazing.
platform. Yeah, it was. I mean, very different group of individuals sharing common ground,
It
and literally breaking bread. So, my favorite thing is food.
right.
So, so
And that
uh,
it was good.
yeah, that was very good, wasn't it? I was
Yeah.
still doing the keto thing at the time, though, so it was really hard for
Oh,
me.
that was tough.
Keto in New Orleans is not
Not good.
easy whatsoever. And I've gone even further the other direction. I've gone to plant-based now. So that New Orleans, it would be very hard to
It
break
would
bread
be
with me
yeah,
now. So,
yeah.
um, I see that Christina Laster has a comment here where she says,
Yeah.
"We knew inequities existed from the time we were born, something we're battling every day. I feel now people see how dark the reality is." And that could be something that comes out of this is I might be a better advocate after this for the United States getting off its butt and making sure that we're fully wired, making sure that we have broadband everywhere. It's 2020.
I agree.
I'm old enough to remember the day that CNN went online and HBO went online. I can remember the first day of MTV. How you like that action?
I think we're about the same age.
You
So
think so? I can remember day one. I can remember watching. They played Def Leppard like 80 times a day.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, just like over and over again. Do you remember what the first song was? The very first song on MTV?
I don't. I'm just going to kind of let you know where I lived.
Yeah.
We didn't have cable.
See, this is my
We
point.
didn't
Wow.
have cable. I was like, when I went back to my hometown, and I grew up in Wisconsin, and so a little town, and we didn't have, push button phone for a while.
Wow.
We had rotary dial because it wasn't available, or at least that's what my mom told me. She could have been lying, but we didn't have 911 service. We didn't we lived in the sticks. So
What's the name of the city, if you don't mind sharing?
Elkhorn, Wisconsin.
Hmm.
So it's down southwest of Milwaukee. Lake Geneva is.
Oh wow. Okay, it's way down there. Yeah. Okay. Oh wow.
Yeah, little town.
Yeah, I get to Wisconsin, every now. I mean, living in Minnesota,
Right.
Wisconsin's like right next door, so we get to see it. But the not having cable back then, right?
Yes.
Now imagine fast forward to 2020,
Right.
and there are still people. My brother-in-law actually lives not too far from us here, and he lives right at the edge of where the broadband gets to, so he can't get normal internet.
Right. And we should be, I always say it's 2020. Like, come on. It's kind of like still paying for long distance, right?
Mm-hmm.
We should have access in every area. I know Oklahomans here, we have the same issue. A lot of people would go to their libraries to utilize the internet, and now the libraries are closed. And actually, I was going to drive up to, we have a library right next door, to see if I could sit in the parking lot and still access their internet, just so people knew that was an option.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people do rely on, things like that because they don't have it in their homes. And so we do need to get families connected and reasonably priced. And we have, a lot of companies offering free internet to families.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't investigated as to whether or not that means they'll come in and make sure they have access in their home, how that works. But, we have to do better in that.
I think actually our schools, because of where they're located and because there's one in every district, or there's a geographical boundary that isn't usually too large, that maybe schools could be great places to put cell towers.
Right.
And there's a cost to putting cell towers anywhere. So maybe that cost can be waived if you're going to make sure that the students of schools get internet. Right. So, okay, let's just say that maybe that's one point of advocacy. Maybe parents can learn that this is very concrete thing. I see Tilly has left us a note that, her first trip to lobby in DC was in 2010, and it was around this issue of broadband. So maybe for sure this should be on the agenda. What are some other concrete agenda items do you think that should be part of the new advocacy?
I think access is one, and equitability and funding, for all schools. I and just open enrollment and open access to schools. We have kids in Oklahoma City who don't have the things that we have on the south side of Oklahoma City, and I don't think it's fair. And I know, we had a teacher like, the fair is over there, but it has to be equitable. Fair is not the right word, but equitable. We're all humans, and we're all here, and our kids should not have to fight to be educated. We should not have to fight for children to be educated equally
Mhm.
in America. That's just kind of how I feel. Like there should be no need for our organization or for
Mhm.
your advocacy, or that there should be none. We should just it should just be an automatic human right.
I'm gonna push you back on that, though. Do you want my pushback?
Sure.
Here it comes, Colleen, early in the morning. Chris Stewart, pushback. It's not real pushback. It's just it relates to my earlier point about parents being responsible for their
Right,
kids. I do think that voluntary associations are the way to go. So
right.
parents coming together in groups like yours, I think in some ways are better than having unions,
I
right?
agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and somewhat better than having like state-controlled organizations that run everything. I think there's more social power in voluntary associations.
I agree with that, but I just don't think the family should have to sue a school system to have access to
That's right.
an education option.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by when I
Yeah.
say there shouldn't be a need for that. That shouldn't be even a question. That
Mhm.
shouldn't be something parents have to do. We shouldn't, when my grandson was born, um, it was an eye opener for me. He was in Memphis. He was a mixed race child, and some things that my stepdaughter would bring up, I probably never had to think of for her or my kids. And it was a new reality for him.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
you know, on a normal day, it would break my heart just because I love all kids, even my own. I mean, I love them. And it just broke my heart to think that I didn't see color when it came to him. I just saw this amazing kid,
Mhm.
that he was my grandson. There was no difference in him than any other kid, but he had already started, things for him were just going to be different. And I don't think we should educate based on that. And we shouldn't put kids in schools based on that. And, it's they should just have access to a good, solid education, no matter what.
Mhm.
Our teachers are taught in the same manner. We should be able to deliver education in the same manner and the same quality.
You know,
That's
I
just
think like what you're mentioning, there's active lawsuits going on right now. There was the lawsuit in California that was like a right to literacy, I think, and there's one in Michigan, similar case, students suing the state because
right,
they need to fulfill their state constitution's mandate that all kids get an adequate education. And maybe I think that's where some of the power is. This is in state
right,
constitutions that already are. We have a thing in Minnesota right now where there are two notable Federal Reserve people who are pushing a change to our constitution that just adds a little bit of language in it that says that parents and students basically have a right to
right,
not just education, but a quality education.
right,
And that is being fought. Changing the language just to add that parents have a right and parents and students have a right. And the educational bureaucracy is the one who's fighting it, and the teachers' unions. And the reason that they're fighting it, they say, is because that opens up the possibility and the door that parents, if they have that right, they can start suing the
right,
state for resources, like
right,
for money. And they don't want that,
right,
which is to me is totally bizarre.
right. Well, one word we hear a lot in the online world is accountability.
Hmm.
And,
Hmm.
sometimes I question, where's the accountability on the other side? Why aren't we accountable to those students who spend this time and get pushed along and can't read,
Hmm.
or, you know, that's a big thing. And parents should be able to, um, it is our responsibility first and foremost to parent, but we put our kids in school and trust. We trust that the educators are doing what we've, asked them to do, what they're hired to do, and that is to teach and provide instruction and provide curriculum. And when they don't do that, there has to be some way that some accountability on the other side.
Corey DeAngelis says here that he thinks that putting the word uniform into state constitutions is actually a unique way, or not in a unique way. It's a clever way to crowd out competition.
Right.
So when a state says, some states have uniforms, some states have adequate. No states, I think, have quality as one of their state mandates, their constitutional mandates. But the uniform, when that is in the Constitution, that basically means you're going to provide the same thing to everybody the same way through the same system. And if it deviates from that, it's going to be considered a constitutional issue, which actually is a super protective thing for the system exactly as it is right now, to keep it that way. And probably keeps us far off from my dream of the, what did I call it? The individual learning allotment, the ILA, TM trademark. Corey DeAngelis, before you steal it from me. In terms of advocacy and parenting and parent advocacy after this, the question that I'm having guide this discussion, do we think this time that parents are at home, that they're going to learn anything that makes them better advocates? And here's some things. I mean, we've already listed a couple things. Are they going to become better advocates for making sure that every family and child has access to the internet and to the world, basically to the world fund of information? Are we going to pay attention to making sure that funds or resources are distributed in a way that's equitable, so that makes sure that kids who need more get more, and kids who need less actually get what's adequate, but we don't have it lopsided the way that we have it right now? I wonder if we're going to learn anything about family economic security overall, just in general, and how important it is. Here's one that I've been bringing up to folks, and I don't know what you'll think about this is, can you imagine if a place like California is going to be 1 in 2 people that are going to get the coronavirus, and in the United States there's going to be hundreds of thousands, maybe millions that come up with this, that it will travel faster in the lower income populations and shift workers, the frontline shift workers, than anyone. Can you imagine a large number of single moms who are shift workers, who are weekly shift workers, getting the coronavirus, and what that will mean once you take them out completely, like when they are not able? For the ones that have extended families that are able to help, God bless you, that's great. But for the ones that don't, the ones who rely on the system and their kids rely on them as the sole breadwinner, I don't think we have policies in place right now. If we think the hospital and the medical systems are taxed, think about our foster care system, our child protection system. They're really taxed. And I wonder what we're going to do as parent advocates to use our social class and position to put that on the table.
Right. With this whole thing, I talked to my sister and I said, could you imagine what mom would have done? My mom raised 4 girls on her own, and she, and we were poor. She worked 3 jobs, and there were times we barely made it, and barely made the basics. And I don't know where we would have been in this time back then. Just, my oldest sister did a lot, and she stepped in a lot. And, I think a lot of it would have been on her again, on that older sibling. And what would have happened if, something would have happened to my mother? I don't know. The foster system probably maybe would have been where we would have ended up. And we do need to think about that. We do need to find a way to advocate for something to prevent or to prepare for that in the future. And that is something that we need to
I think it's going to be tough a little bit, because it's going to require a bipartisan, I think. This is something where conservatives and liberals are going to have to find their better angels and use their intellects, because it's going to affect everybody. If the state suddenly has possession of large numbers of kids because their sole breadwinners are taken out of the workforce and are sick, like in the hospital or whatnot, we're already seeing issues with kids at the border, like what it's like to actually have to house large number of kids that you weren't ready for. I see that in our future, and I wonder, as parent advocates, what our role is going to be in all of that. Listen, I actually really appreciate the work that you do, and I'm learning, I think, within the last year, and really being supportive of you and your work, and these cross-cultural, cross-racial, cross-economic, cross-geographic coalitions and partnerships that we're trying to form, that there's more work to be done. Like for us to be good friends, for us to be better friends, there's more work to be done, and we just have to be committed to it. I'm committed to it. I'm making a commitment,
Yeah.
like right now, openly to it.
I, during this time, I'm asking my daughter, what can we do? What can we do to make, what can you do to help? And we need to reach out and just be supportive of those who are struggling, no matter where their struggles are, and just be humans. I that whole bipartisan thing. I think at just some point we just need to be humans, and
Ooh,
just be human. And
I love that.
what
Be human. Just be human.
like how
Yeah.
can you look at families or people who are struggling and not do something? So, and I just do want to give an option to families out there who are finding themselves just in this situation, with unexpectedly, like nobody expected this. That we do offer a support group online, for parents who are now finding themselves in this online world or distance learning world, or just even at home, um, just at home support.
Mhm.
This, and that's the parent, what did we call it? I've lost track. Parent support, for online learning.
I'm glad you didn't call it a boot camp. People have a habit of calling things boot camp.
Hey,
Like,
we've done that. We did our parent learning, our parent advocacy training. It was boot camp, and I'm like, this is not the boot camp I went to.
I was about to say, I just
a lot
remembered that you were in the Navy. For our listeners and watchers, Colleen is actually a veteran, and was in the Navy. No,
Yeah.
no, was it Navy?
It was Navy. Yes,
It was the Navy. Yeah. So it's probably really not the boot camp
no,
that
but
you
this
remember.
is just, we have a mentorship program set up so that families can, or parents can, match with a seasoned distance learner, and kind of thank you, Tilly, for sharing that. And so we can help you get through this the best that we can.
Mhm.
This is not the norm. None of this is normal. And we are going to be seeing a lot of big changes, and new issues come up, and we need to be there for each other to help each other through these things. And, you know, I invite anyone to let me know anything that I can do to help serve them better, or someone that they know better, to reach out to me and ask me, just let me know. And I will do everything that I can to serve the best that I can, because there are going to be needs that we don't even realize, that come up through all of this. And we need to be willing. I think that's the biggest thing, is to be willing to serve where we can, and to give of us what we have, the resources that we have, where they're needed. And I think that will be a big start, is just the willingness to do it, and the willingness to come together. I know our organization is consistently trying to figure out where we're needed. And the NPU is just, ready to serve. These organizations are ready to serve. Sometimes we just need to know where we're needed, and what is needed.
And when you say NPU, I want people to know that that's the National Parents Union. So if you Google them, you'll find the National Parents Union, run by Carrie Rodriguez and Alma Vasquez.
Yeah.
Alma Marquez. I'm butchering my sister's name here. And you are with the National Coalition of for Public School Options. Is that what it is?
National Coalition for Public School Options.
Right. And then Tilly is reminding us that you can find on Twitter a group that is Parents for support, and that's the number 4. So parents, number 4, support. And if you look for that on Twitter, and there's also a Facebook group with that same name.
Yes, and
Lots of support.
I encourage you to join the Facebook group. There are so many resources that we don't expect anyone to go in, but if there's something you're in need of, there's going to be a resource that you can search for something that you need, or just throw a question out. There are so many parents that we are just so proud of their engagement and their willingness to share their experiences and their resources. We've had groups on there to share their resources. So if you're in need of just support or resources, that group has been phenomenal for that. And we are, like I said, we have the mentorship program, which I encourage parents to engage in, because this is tough. I mean, it's tough when you choose to do this. When you choose to come home, it is tough. It is tough. I can't imagine being thrown into this and not prepared. It just really, I feel for those parents, and anything that we can do to help, we want to be there to help parents through this.
Well, I love it. My final thought on all of this is I do hope that parents become better advocates from what they learn right now from being home during this period of time. It's not a vacation and it's not a snow day, so we have to be home anyways. But I hope that we use some of that time not just to advocate for ourselves and our own children, but to become advocates for the least of them. There are, I think, kind of reasons for doing this, no matter where you sit on the political spectrum or whatever you believe in your faith. There's a reason to do it. And I think the reason to do it is over 150 years, parents have been professionalized out of the educational equation. And that was an unnatural state of things, but it was hard to get out of because it was normalized to the point where we couldn't get out of it. With the upheaval of COVID, the unfortunate upheaval of COVID, it does offer an opportunity for us to reassess the actual priority of parents being the sole kind of responsible guardian for children, period, and that the systems around them become subordinated to the idea that parents are the sole responsible guardian for children. Schools don't have kids, parents have kids. Schools don't have children, parents and families and guardians have children. So we need to, first, before we ask for rights, we have to take the role. We have to step into our role and live in it and be good adults. The second thing I think we really have to do at that point is start figuring out what are the responsibilities of the role. And one of them, educating your child, is like I can't think of a more core responsibility of a parent or guardian than that. And then we are able to fight for our rights. I want to end and wrap with the thing that I think you said here, and I put it online as worthy of a t-shirt, and I will give you credit if it goes on a t-shirt. This thing about just be human, be a good human. Don't be a leftist or a rightist or a this or a that. Just start by realizing that the needless suffering of children in the United States is not a political issue. It is actually all of our issues. And we have a vested interest in voluntarily addressing those issues and not looking to the state to do it, because I think we're learning right now just how incapable the state is and their systems are. We're seeing that uncovered now in a big, ugly way. And the only thing we have is what you said, Colleen, is each other. So thank you so much for coming on this morning.
Thank you for having me. It's always a treat to talk with you.
We're going to have you back.
Man.
Yeah. We're going to have you back. And if there's anything that you think we should be promoting or talking about, let us know.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And for everybody who's been watching and who has made comments, I want to say, shout out to Gwen and Christina and Tilly and Corey. And am I missing anybody? Matthew and LaShawn. I can keep going. This, you guys are not going to remember Romper Room, but I can remember at the end of Romper Room, she would look through the thing and call everybody's name, and they would never call Christopher. And I'm still bitter about it. But so I'm not going to be able to call everybody out. But thank you guys for watching and for listening. And we will see you probably tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.